it's a little exhausting to go through that
Yeah.
day.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think a lot of us can relate to that experience. So when you went to college, were you studying, what were you studying?
Everything. I changed my major so many times. Um, I, uh, I, I mean, I went to a little Presbyterian school in Tennessee, and so still in the same kind of fundamentalist Southern Bible Belt vein, but even at a little small Presbyterian school, you're going to have a much more diverse experience than you are when you're just in your family's cultural bubble and literally don't know anyone who doesn't believe almost exactly the same way you do. So it was interesting to be in school and like where I worked with the ESL department for a little while, just meeting people from around the world who did not line up with American evangelicalism at all in any way, and then just meeting people from other faith traditions, other Christian traditions, and some students who, God forbid, at our Christian school, weren't even all that Christian. Like just
Right.
they landed there for all kinds of different reasons, and
Mhm.
so that was the first time I ever had my eyes opened to the fact that not everyone around me who doesn't believe the same things is a terrible pagan, as I had been taught to believe, or a terrible heathen. That was the whole reason my podcast is called Heathen, is because that was just the word my mom used growing up all the time. Anything that felt outside of our religious cultural experience, oh, that's heathen. Those heathens,
Right.
So I had
Yeah.
to reclaim that word a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. And so you brought up well, I know the Heathen podcast comes a little bit further down the road.
Yeah, it does.
um,
Much later.
yeah. So I guess when did so after college, what'd you do?
So college, um, I moved back home for a little bit, and then I moved out west. I had an opportunity to go to Reno, Nevada, um, and I had grown up reading all the Western stories, the whole just and go west, young man. Like um, that was a it
Right.
was a whole thing. I was very excited to like go try out a different part of the country. So the biggest little city in the world, Reno, Nevada. I lived there for a couple years. I got involved in a church there, a big mega church. I was eventually
Mm-hmm.
brought on to staff. I was a worship leader, and then from that experience, I became part of a church planting team from that church that moved down here to San Diego, where I am today. And
Gotcha.
so that's why I'm in San Diego, was to plant a church, which I did
Uh-huh.
with a group of people, and we did
And your
that for. I'm sorry.
well, and your sexuality was still something that you weren't necessarily living into at that point, or
Yeah, correct. During all of that time, I was very much, um, I like to say my coming out story is a decade long. Like there wasn't a day when I was like, I'm gay, I'm here, I'm queer. Get used to it.
right?
It happened in very small incremental steps. From telling just a couple close friends at college that, again, I quote unquote, struggle with same sex attraction, because that was the acceptable way to talk about it. I couldn't even
Mm-hmm.
say the words I'm gay, because that would just mean a whole bunch of things that I didn't want people to think about me. I wanted them to know that I was fighting this thing, and like I was working with the Lord to overcome and all of that. Um, so while I was working at the church in Reno, when they wanted to bring me on staff, I that was when I was like, I gotta let some people know what's going on, because I don't want like my worst fear would be to be brought on staff and then for someone to find out later,
Mm-hmm.
and then to get fired or have some kind of public shaming horrible moment. So I told them at the get-go, I was like, look, I struggle with homosexuality. I've done all kinds of things to try and change it. I I self-enrolled in Exodus. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It
Yeah.
was at one point it
Conversion.
was like, yeah, one of the largest conversion therapy organizations in the nation. It's now thankfully disbanded. But I self-enrolled in that, and I went to group meetings, and I went to the national conference, and like did all the steps, and just believed that I earnestly believed for a long time I was going to be able to change my orientation and be straight, because I earnestly believe that's what God wanted for me.
Right.
And um, so I put myself through a lot to try and make those things happen, and they didn't,
Right.
unsurprisingly. Um, now and so the next phase of my coming out was, and this was by the time I had moved to San Diego to start the church. I kind of said to, well, no, actually, I still was trying to live into trying to be straight for a long time.
Right.
I dated some women, really tried to make it happen, and then there was a 5-year period where I just was like, I've done everything I know to do, from going to like healing services, like Pentecostal, like hit you on the head kind of services, to like pray the gay out of you. I've done 12-step programs. I've done Exodus. I've done the group therapy. I have read everything I can get my hands on about this topic. And I finally, got to a breaking point where I was like, I can't, this is killing me. It's just
Mm.
exhausting. And I, it's killing my spirit and my soul. And so I'm just going to accept that for whatever reason, I am gay, and that's not a thing apparently that I am able to change.
Mm.
But I still am in that time operating out of a place of a lot of fear that I would lose my community, that I would lose my place in this thing that I was very good at. Again, very good
Yeah.
at church. Um, and so I chose, and I was very public with this. I was like, I'm gay, and I'm choosing to be single and celibate. And I did that for 5 years. Um, and and I don't. Are you familiar with the Gay Christian Network, GCN? I think that now they're called Q Christian Network. But they were, back in the day, they were called the Gay Christian Network, and they had
Mm-hmm.
national conferences, and it was a space where you could come as a queer Christian, um, and they had what they would call side A and side B. And I honestly don't remember which is which now at this point, but one of them is like people who believe that it's okay to be gay and to date, and
Mm-hmm.
have same-sex relationships, to be trans, to be whoever you are, and live into it, and you can still be a Christian. And then the other side was people who were like, no, God has clearly said no to same-sex relationships, so you can be gay, and then you still have to navigate around that somehow. Like, you can't live
Right.
into it. So I was the side that, for a long time I was like, well, no, I'll be gay, but I won't live into it.
Yeah.
Um,
Was
yeah,
there what
and
was there a surrender? What I guess brought you to? I don't know if surrender is the right word, but kind of what brought you to that space of being okay